During the past 50 years, the sperm counts have been dropping constantly. An average male today only produces half of the sperm that he could produce in 1973. And this trend does not only concern Western men. The male fertility crisis has been recorded in every region of the world. If it continues this way, by 2045, the average human male will be infertile. But during the past decades, we've only seen improvement in our lifestyles. What is causing all of that bullshit? The source of this crisis is probably sitting right now on your countertop. It's probably under your bed, in your stomach, and on your testicles. It's everywhere. There is literally no escape. They are not destroyed by heat, by time, they are not biodegradable. They just sit there and do harm. In 1907, the first synthetic plastic material was synthesized in the United States. After that, the plastic industry has been growing exponentially to this day. In 1930s, American inventors found a way of improving some of the plastic's properties by doping it with chemicals called plasticizers. One of the most used classes of plasticizers out there is phthalates. Phthalates are everywhere. Almost every commodity plastic material out there uses them as plasticizer. The most notable one is PVC. Pure PVC is brittle, it's fragile. But when you add some phthalates in it, it becomes more elastic and you can now make pipes and packages out of it. But phthalates don't bind chemically to the plastics. They just sit between the molecules. They're there contained by pure luck. So what happens when you take your food plastic container and you place it into a microwave? Thermodynamics 101, when you warm up some molecules, they start to bump into each other. When they're bumping into the doping molecules, what happens to them? They break out of the substrate and get into your food, and now you have up to 100 times the initial dose of phthalates that you were gonna get by eating from a cold container. And even if you didn't use microwave, you will still get them in your food. You don't realize how many things around you are made out of plastic. Your clothes are plastic, it's polyester, it's plastic, it contains phthalates. Your food packaging is plastic. Your cookware is plastic. Your fucking, I see it there, I'm guilty of it. Your frying pan has probably a non-stick surface. And non-stick surface contains plasticizers. I actually bought a stainless steel pan. It's a pain in the ass to clean when you burn something, but it's much better in terms of contamination. It's literally just iron, chromium, carbon, and some nickel. And that's it. And phthalates are actually sometimes added even to materials which are not directly plastic, like your shampoo, your liquid soap. They contain phthalates inside of them because they help the odors stick. Basically anything containing fragrance, like your perfume, good smelling shampoo and stuff like that, as long as it has a smell that is artificial, you can be damn sure there's phthalates in there just to keep the smell binding to you for longer. But you're gonna ask me, phthalates don't cause direct health problems, like I don't feel sick after eating from a non-stick pan. So what's the problem with them? Well, there is one, and it could probably make human race go extinct. In 2005, Dr. Shanna Swan got intrigued by some studies conducted on rodents. These studies have found that rodents like mice and rats, when exposed to phthalates, would give birth to an offspring which was sexually underdeveloped. This basically means that their genitals weren't developed correctly. When exposed to enough phthalates, in fact, rodents would become completely infertile. So Shanna got an idea that if rodents suffer from infertility after being exposed to these chemicals, humans could be suffering from it too. And in 2005 she conducted a study on pregnant women where she measured the concentration of phthalates in their urine and then she measured the anogenital distance of their newborn children. This is basically like a parameter, it's like the taint. I'm not gonna go into the details about that, but know that you can measure your sexual development with it. And what she found was that newborn boys whose mothers were exposed to phthalates would have a shorter anogenital distance than normal. They would basically have underdeveloped genitals, and shorter dicks. I'm not exaggerating this. She later found the correlation between the genital length and the phthalate exposure of your mother. So if your dick is small, then you know whose fault is that. This is basically due to the fetus vulnerability. When you're in the womb, you're going through the most development of your entire life. And when you're exposed to phthalates, which are anti-androgens, anti-androgen basically means they go and work against testosterone. They disrupt your testosterone and they reduce it. So you don't get enough androgens as an unborn male. And this hinders some of your sexual traits' development. So you don't get enough testosterone in the womb and you're born feminized. This is literally the official scientific term. And it's not just some TikTok femboy problem. A 2008 study in China found that there's a strong correlation between the sperm count reduction and the phthalate exposure. If you were exposed to phthalates when in the womb, you will literally be less fertile. And your dick is gonna be smaller too. That's a big L for you, right? In 2009, a study summarized all previous findings. It found correlations between different types of phthalates and basically all the bullshit that happens to you when you're exposed to them, which is increased sperm DNA damage, decreased sperm motility, decreased sperm concentration, and decreased free testosterone. In 2017, Dr. Shanna Swan, the same one who conducted the first 2005 study on children, has confirmed this correlation between lowering sperm count in males and their anogenital distance. And she found that men who had shorter anogenital distance would have 7 times more chance of being infertile. And those who had it really short would have a 16 times more chance of being infertile. Do you realize this? There's actually an interesting fact about all these studies. When American epidemiologists tried to find a control group for their studies, because you have the people who were exposed to phthalates, but you also need a control group of people who were not exposed to them to test your results. And they basically realized that there is no such people in the US. They tried to look everywhere. Everyone were exposed, and the only group of people who that managed to find who weren't exposed to them were actually the Eskimo, who were wearing like jackets made out of seal skin and they would preserve their food by freezing it in the ice. They were the only people who weren't exposed to it. So how can you limit your exposure? Well, there are certain things that you could do. The first and the most important way of exposure is food. Basically, when you're buying any kind of food, you should avoid at all costs buying it wrapped in plastic. When you're buying vegetables, try to pick them whole and place them like in a paper container. When you're buying meat, if you're buying it in plastic, at least make sure that it's not like vacuum sealed, where plastic is firmly pressed onto your meat. Try to buy it in a bigger container where there's air inside. A really important factor to consider is that phthalates are actually fat soluble. They're lipophilic, they really like fats, which means any fatty food that comes in contact with plastics will get soaked with them much more. This is why dairy is like considered estrogenic. Dairy is considered estrogenic not because of the estrogen in the milk, which was proven to actually not being absorbed by your intestine. Just think of it, we've been drinking milk for thousands of years. So our intestines have adapted to it. They no longer get this estrogenic crash from milk. But the problem is milk is not only sealed in packaging, which is made out of plastic and contains phthalates. So when you buy milk in like these plastic bottles, all of the phthalate that's in this plastic and the surface it's gonna go into your milk because it sees the fat and it wants to go into fat. Now you're gonna tell me, well, I'm gonna buy milk in glass. There was a study conducted by the same Dr. Shanna Swan, where she tested people who lived in countryside for phthalates, and she tried to remove all of the plastic packaging. She tried to only supply food without plastic, and what she found that they actually had more plastic exposure. And this is because they're dairy products. Even though it was packaged in glass, it was still containing a ton of phthalates. Like none of the other food they consumed contained as much phthalates as the dairy products. They actually found why it was this way. Just think about milk. How is the milk extracted from a cow? You could imagine like this traditional way of a farmer sitting and like milking the cow by hand, but it's not the case anymore. No one does that anymore. Right now there is a machine that attaches the tube to the cow and it milks it automatically by vacuum. And what is the tube made out of? Plastic. Phthalates. And these phthalates from the tube, because they love fat so much, they get absorbed by the milk flowing through it, and they end up in any milk and any dairy that you buy. So if you were really to go crazy extreme on this, you should avoid any kind of dairy and don't buy fats wrapped in plastic. If you see any kind of fat wrapped in plastic, don't buy it. Canned food and canned beverages are actually a very sneaky source of phthalates too. You may think it's made out of like aluminum, so you would say, oh, it's not phthalates, it's not plastic. But there is plastic lining on the inside. Every canned food has a plastic lining on the inside. I'm looking up there because I'm guilty of it. I have a canned fish there. I'm not sure if I'm gonna eat it ever. I'm gonna save it for like a nuclear war. I wouldn't give a shit about it. I'm gonna be irradiated anyway. I'll be infertile anyway from like nuclear blast. But don't eat anything canned. Canned beverages they suck anyway. They're like plain sugar and acid. So don't eat them. Now on your clothes. Basically try to wear cotton everywhere. And if you don't have everything in cotton, at least try to wear cotton as your lowest levels. So when you have like my t-shirt is cotton, my underwear is cotton and like 5% the last day, well 5% is like the L I take for this. Basically only wear polyester for a limited amount of time if you cannot completely exclude it. And don't wear it on the lower levels. Wear it like over other clothes which are made of cotton. It's gonna save your skin because your skin is gonna soak the phthalates through it too. And speaking of skin, your skincare products probably all contain phthalates because they have a smell. Every smelly fragrance in your soap, in your body wash, in your shampoo contains phthalates because it wants to stick, and this makes the fragrance stick to your skin more and you smell better for longer. So basically, you either go autistically and try to find a body wash that doesn't contain fragrance so that there's no phthalates in it, or you just use like plain soap. I just buy soap that doesn't contain any fragrance in it. It doesn't have a smell. Like it has this weird, almost annoying soapy smell, but it doesn't smell anything like artificial. And the last but not least is your water. If you can afford it, buy either a reverse osmosis machine or a distiller. Basically, the pros and cons of these are distiller is very energivore, which means it consumes a lot of energy. It's like 750 watt hours per liter of water. Basically, a distiller would evaporate all the water and turn it into water vapor, and then it's gonna condense it back into liquid water. And what it's gonna do, it's gonna leave all the weird chemicals in the first location, and then you're gonna get a glass of pure water. Now, reverse osmosis basically does the same thing but by filtering the water. It's gonna remove all the impurities and the hormones, and you're gonna get basically pure water. But if you do these things, remember to add back electrolyte, because if you drink distilled water for like 2 days, you're gonna fucking die. So you should add electrolytes back in there. Add some salt, buy some different salts, you not only sodium chloride but other things too. I'm not gonna dive deep into it right now, just do your research. When it comes to cookware, just get rid of your non-stick pan. It's horrible anyway, it's like artificial and it contains phthalates, and I really don't like the fact that there is fluorine in there. I just don't like fluorine in my food. So get rid of that, buy a stainless steel or a cast iron pan, it's gonna be much better. And take the L, learn to cook. If you suck at cooking, just learn at cooking with cast iron or steel. It's much better, and you're even gonna be look good in like some girl's eyes because you know how to cook with a stainless steel pan. It's actually a pretty important skill. Implement this advice. I hope it helps you. If you just do these things, everything will be fine. In 2045, you're gonna be me and you. We are gonna be the single fertile men on Earth. I'm joking. It's gonna be okay. We're gonna develop other chemical solutions to replace phthalates. But right now, the best thing you can do for yourself and for your future family is to avoid being a TikTok femboy and removing phthalates from your food. Thank you for watching and see you again soon.